Just imagine a Tesla electric car costing less than $12,000. It seems like an exaggeration, right? But that's exactly what Elon Musk intends to put on the streets with the Model 2, a project that, if it goes as planned, could change the game for electric mobility. During the earnings conference for the first quarter of 2025, Tesla let slip what many people were expecting. Production of the Model 2 is scheduled to begin in June of this year. A car with the Tesla seal, compact, efficient, and affordable. This promise carries a lot of weight, especially in a market where most electric cars are still out of reach for most people. The idea is simple but bold: to transform the Model 2 into the people's car, an electric vehicle capable of competing directly with more popular combustion-powered models. And this wouldn't just be a marketing ploy. If Tesla can really deliver performance, autonomy, and quality at such an aggressive price, it could completely redefine what we understand today as an affordable car. It would be a kind of modern Beetle, but with cutting-edge technology and zero emissions. And let's be honest, Elon Musk doesn't usually joke around when he announces these changes of direction. Of course, this type of announcement raises more questions than it answers. How is it possible to manufacture a quality electric car at such a low price? Where does the secret lie? Tesla, it seems, is betting on innovations not only in design, but mainly in the heart of the car, the battery. And this is where the plan starts to get even more interesting. To truly cut costs, the company will have to abandon old formulas and embark on a new era of electrification. The Model 2 should also be compact, agile, and have a simpler look, precisely to accelerate large-scale production and allow entry into markets where price is still the biggest barrier. We don't have official images yet, but there's already talk of a minimalist design with futuristic lines and a leaner interior, without giving up the famous central panel with touchscreen. The Tesla experience, albeit in a simplified version, should be present, which is already a huge attraction. The big bet will be on how this car will be manufactured. Tesla has already hinted that it intends to apply the latest in automated production to the Model 2, using so-called Giga casting, a technique that allows large parts of the car to be molded in just a few processes, saving time, materials, and money. This, combined with a platform designed from the beginning to be cheap and efficient, could be the secret behind the reduced cost. Another interesting factor is the timing. With the global economy still shaky and the pressure for sustainable solutions increasing, launching an affordable EV seems like a strategic genius. If the Model 2 does arrive in 2025, Tesla could capture a huge slice of the market that is still hesitant to switch to electric. People who have always seen EVs as an unattainable luxury might finally consider this option, and that changes everything. But of course, to put an affordable electric car on the streets, Tesla will have to face an old enemy that is becoming increasingly unstable: lithium. It was once considered the white gold of electric mobility, but now it has become a real obstacle. The problem starts with prices, which seem like a roller coaster with no brakes. In recent years, the price of lithium has skyrocketed more than 500%, going from around $6,000 per ton in 2020 to more than $60,000 in 2022. This not only messes with automakers' planning, but also makes cars more expensive for consumers. And lithium isn't just a burden on your pocketbook. The environmental impact of extraction is huge. In some regions of South America, such as Chile and Bolivia, extracting a single ton of lithium consumes up to 2.2 million liters of water. Imagine this in areas that are already suffering for drought. The pressure on local ecosystems is brutal. Rivers dry up, communities suffer from water shortages, and the soil becomes increasingly depleted. For a company that sells itself as a symbol of sustainability, like Tesla, this type of contradiction is starting to bother us a lot. Furthermore, there is a dependency issue that bothers even the most powerful countries in the world. Currently, more than 70% of the lithium processed globally comes from China. In other words, a large part of the electric vehicle supply chain is literally in the hands of a single country. And in times of trade tensions, unexpected tariffs, and disputes for global influence, this is a huge vulnerability. All it takes is a diplomatic friction or a logistical blockade for prices to explode and production to be paralyzed. And we don't even need to look too far back to understand the risk. The semiconductor crisis in 2022 sent a very clear warning. When the global supply chain is too concentrated, any noise becomes a disaster. With lithium, the risk is even more complex because in addition to being expensive and difficult to extract, it also depends on refinement control by a few. This calls into question the entire ambition of making electric vehicles an option for everyone. How can you popularize something that depends on an expensive, scarce, and geopolitically sensitive resource? Then there's the growing demand. With electric vehicle sales soaring like never before, the need for lithium is also growing. Between 2022 and 2030 alone, demand is expected to triple, driven by the global rush to ditch fossil fuels. That sounds good, but that pressure could simply crush supply. More demand, less supply, and the price, well, you know where that's going. Instead of democratizing EVs, lithium could end up doing the opposite, restricting access. And if all this weren't enough, lithium also has technical problems. Lithium-ion batteries aren't exactly the most stable in the world. They can overheat, explode in extreme cases, and even lose performance over time. After 1,000 or 2,000 recharges, performance starts to drop, forcing the consumer to replace the battery or even the entire car. For a popular model like the Model 2, this is a huge obstacle. There's no point in selling a cheap car if the battery is going to give up after a few years. While the whole world is still obsessed with lithium, Tesla seems to have already taken a step forward with a technology that few were paying attention to, the sodium-sulfur battery. This idea may even sound strange at first glance. After all, salt and sulfur are not exactly synonymous with high technology. But that's where the genius lies. Scientists at the University of Sydney in Australia have managed to develop a new generation of this battery that is leaving many people speechless. And yes, it has everything to be a true game changer in the electric vehicle industry. This new battery, known as Gen 2 NAS sodium-sulfur, is made from materials that are ubiquitous. Sodium comes from common salt, and sulfur is a byproduct of the oil industry. In other words, no materials that are rare, scarce, or monopolized by global powers. This means that costs drop dramatically, and so do political complications. This change alone eliminates many of the problems that lithium brought and paves the way for something much bigger: mass production with democratic access to electric cars. Another striking aspect is the environmental aspect. Sodium-sulfur batteries are much cleaner to produce. They do not require the destruction of ecosystems or the absurd use of fresh water in desert regions. And best of all, they are non-toxic. While lithium batteries require special care when discarded, sodium-sulfur batteries are much more environmentally friendly. This gives Tesla a very important moral advantage. Not only could it reduce costs, but it could also prove that it is possible to innovate without harming the planet. But what's really starting to get engineers talking is the performance. These batteries aren't just cheap and sustainable, they're also durable. While lithium-ion batteries start to lose power after 1,000 or 2,000 recharges, sodium-sulfur batteries are showing resistance for up to 10,000 cycles. That's a huge leap. For car buyers, this means years more without having to think about replacing the battery. This means direct savings for the consumer and less electronic waste on the planet. And guess what? These batteries also work very well in extreme temperatures. Unlike lithium batteries, which tend to suffer in intense heat or freeze in severe cold, sodium-sulfur batteries can withstand temperatures of up to 350 degrees Celsius without losing efficiency. This changes everything. Imagine a car that runs just as well in the Texas desert as it does in a Canadian blizzard, without the need for complex cooling systems. It sounds like science fiction, but it's now becoming a reality. It's also worth mentioning that, despite its unglamorous name, sodium-sulfur has a solid track record. This technology didn't just come out of nowhere. It's been used in stationary applications, such as energy storage systems and power grids. What Australian scientists have managed to do is adapt this foundation into something much lighter, more compact, and more powerful. Exactly what an electric car needs. This transition from static to a mobile technology is what's changing the game. Now, what draws the most attention to this new battery is not just the origin of the materials or its absurd durability, it's the pure performance. And when it comes to performance, the magic number that every engineer loves is energy density. The so-called Gen 2 NAS has been promising something that, until recently, seemed impossible for this type of technology, up to 760 watt-hours per kilogram. Just to give you an idea, a traditional lithium-ion battery revolves around 250 to 300 Wh/kg. This means that, in theory, the car could go much further with less weight and taking up less space. This detail completely changes the game when it comes to electric cars. One of the biggest challenges for anyone designing an EV is finding the balance between range, weight, and space. After all, the heavier the battery, the more energy is used to move the car. But if Tesla can fit these ultralight batteries into the Model 2, it could deliver a respectable range, something like 560 kilometers, without having to sacrifice interior space or add unnecessary pounds. That, in a popular car, is practically a revolution in motion. And it doesn't stop there. One point that usually causes a lot of concern among EV users is temperature. Lithium-ion batteries, despite being efficient, are known to get too hot. In some extreme cases, there are reports of overheating, loss of efficiency, and even fires. Sodium-sulfur batteries operate at naturally higher temperatures, which, paradoxically, makes them more stable. Instead of exploding when the heat gets too much, they continue to work just fine. This can reduce the need for complex cooling systems, which also reduces costs and maintenance. This thermal stability also opens the door to more extreme uses. Imagine the Model 2 driving in desert regions or facing harsh winters without any suffering to the battery performance. It's no wonder that many inside Tesla would be considering these batteries as the final piece of the puzzle. And let's be honest, if Elon Musk really puts this to work, he won't just make EVs cheaper. He'll make them more reliable everywhere in the world. Another detail that many people should like is the weight. Gen 2 NAS batteries are up to 30% lighter than traditional lithium-ion batteries. For a compact car like the Model 2, this is pure gold. Less weight means better acceleration performance, more energy efficiency, and, of course, less wear on tires and brakes. Not to mention drivability. A lightweight car is more agile, more fun to drive, and safer in emergency maneuvers. In other words, it's not just a question of cost. It's a question of driving experience. What about safety? Here comes another important point. Sodium-sulfur batteries do not use flammable liquids or produce toxic gases in the event of a failure. This completely eliminates the risk of the so-called thermal runaway, the domino effect that can cause explosions in damaged lithium batteries. For those who want to park a car in the garage and have peace of mind, this is a very strong argument. After all, no one wants a vehicle that turns into a bomb if something goes wrong with the electrical system. Now, if all this technology promises to be so impressive, the inevitable question is, how much will it all cost? And this is where things get even more interesting. Sodium-sulfur batteries are not only safer, more durable, and more efficient. They are also much, much cheaper. And when it comes to mass-market cars, price is everything. The most recent estimates suggest that the cost per kilowatt hour of such a battery could fall to $70 to $90. while lithium-ion batteries still cost around $130 to $150. It may not seem like much at first glance, but at Tesla's production volume, this represents a huge savings. This difference in cost starts with the materials themselves. Sodium, for example, can be extracted from salt. Yes, the same salt you have in your kitchen. And sulfur is basically industrial waste, left over from oil refining processes. This means that the raw material costs almost nothing. While lithium carbonate can exceed $30,000 per ton, sodium carbonate costs between $300 and $400. It's a huge difference, which paves the way for a paradigm shift in the manufacturing of electric vehicles. If these savings are confirmed, the Model 2 could hit the market for an estimated $11,957, which is almost unbelievable for Tesla. For comparison, the cheapest Model 3 currently costs more than double that. At this price, the Model 2 would not only compete with other electric cars, but also with popular combustion cars. And then the entire market would have to reinvent itself. Literally, what was once an elite segment could become a common choice, even for those who today only think about a basic 1.0 car. This also directly impacts the long-term cost of ownership. With a battery that lasts longer and requires less maintenance, the consumer spends less not only on the purchase, but also over the life of the car. Fewer visits to the garage, fewer component replacements, and a much lower chance of headaches. For those who always thought that electric cars were synonymous with hidden costs, this changes everything. A cheaper, more durable, and more reliable car sounds like music to the ears of the average consumer. And there's more. With the production of these batteries being simpler and using abundant raw materials, Tesla will be able to decentralize its factories and set up production lines in regions closer to the end consumer. This cuts transportation costs, reduces the environmental impact of logistics, and can even reduce the waiting time to receive the car. A leaner, faster, and cheaper supply chain. Everything a company looking to scale needs. This cost reduction also leaves room for something Elon Musk loves to do: design innovation. By saving on the battery, there's room in the budget to improve other parts of the vehicle. Maybe a more intuitive infotainment system, maybe a simplified autonomous driving system, or maybe improvements to the interior finishes. All of these become more feasible when the heart of the car, which is the battery, costs much less. And precisely because it is looking so far ahead, Tesla knows that cheap cannot be expensive. Then, the geopolitical advantages of this new bet come into play. And here the conversation gets serious. Because, let's be honest, depending on China to manufacture anything on a large scale has already become a headache for half the planet. Now imagine depending on China for an item as strategic as the battery that powers millions of electric vehicles in the world. That's right. Today, China concentrates more than 70% of the world's lithium processing capacity. And this puts the entire sector at risk. With the growing trade frictions between the US and China, tariffs, embargoes, and uncertainties have become routine. In such a scenario, any interruption in the lithium supply chain can collapse factories, delay deliveries, and, of course, skyrocket prices. Elon Musk has already understood that it is not possible to build the people's car if its heart depends on a single, volatile source. And that is why he is betting heavily on alternative path, a path where sodium and sulfur take the place of lithium, without the geopolitical constraints that hamper the sector today. In addition to being cheaper and more abundant, these elements are found in places with more stable trade relations, such as Australia and the United States. Sodium can be extracted from seawater, and sulfur, as an industrial byproduct, is already out there in abundance, just waiting to be used. This allows Tesla to create a more diversified, more resilient, and, most importantly, less vulnerable supply chain to international conflicts, something that is essential to guaranteeing production and price stability in the long term. And it's not just a question of economics or security. There's also symbolism to all this.